Hello, welcome to the CarCast+Edmunds podcast. I'm Matt, the moderator, DeAndrew, here with Alistair Weaver. All of a sudden, you're looking red. What's
I don't know
happening?
what happened. I don't know what happened there, Matt. I was just looking at my little picture and I have gone very pink indeed. So let me keep talking. I'll play around my
As
lighting.
soon,
It's
as soon
another
as we
great
hit,
week. It's another great introduction. Oh, there we go. I'm back. I'm no
there you
longer,
go,
if you're
you're
watching on
back. As soon
YouTube,
as
I'm
we hit
now.
record, you turned red. It was like it went from Alistair to evil Alistair, like evil twin. I don't
Yeah,
know what's going on there.
I don't know.
Uh,
And it's raining in LA. I mean, who'd have thought it's, but I've actually got a leak. After everything that we've been through in January, I now have a leak in my roof because it's the first time it's
I,
rained in about a year and a half.
it's funny. I was going to mention that. I was like, yeah, we're getting some weather out here, but it's really nothing compared to what so much of the rest of the country is actually experiencing as far as weather. But yes, we got hit with a bunch of fires. It was absolutely terrible. And then the rain came and put out the fires, and there's mudslides and flooding, and there's just seems to be no winning, I guess.
No.
It's it's been an adventure for sure. And I'm starting to meet all of my new neighbors in the apartment complex that all lost their homes in the Palisades and they're moving into apartments because they want to be surrounded by water like I am. If I get water out the window. So they're like, yeah, we're going a little bit more toward the water for sure.
I have a little my kids, they're all grown out of it now, but I have one of those little like tiny plastic McLarens, the little
Yeah.
McLaren supercar things, which I can remember building a few years back. And that's currently almost full of water out of my window. So
Yeah. Well, save that. I could probably fit in it.
you would probably be okay, yeah. And it's a McLaren that you might just about afford, and the depreciation's not too bad. So
Yeah, it's not too bad. I'm gonna
it's
show
only
up to
200 bucks. He hasn't got that far to fall.
the next McLaren event. I'm gonna pull up in that thing.
I remember going to Pebble Beach, I think it was the year before last, and somebody was walking their dog around the quail gathering in one of these like little McLaren things. I was like, there is nothing more Pebble Beach concourse than that.
I listen. The next time McLaren's like, "Hey, we're gonna do a press event in LA. We're gonna rent for 2 nights a $48 million home in Bel Air, and we're gonna host a cocktail hour." I'm gonna put that thing in the back of my truck, park my truck down the street, and I'm gonna roll up in that tiny little
Do
McLaren.
that. I will
And
be happy to push you.
as long as it's not up the hill like it was
Yeah.
a few years ago, that one with the dinosaur head in it. Remember that McLaren event? There was the house had the dinosaur head in it.
The last one I think would been I think he was an owner or something of Victoria's Secrets or something like that.
Yeah,
There
the
was all
last one
sorts of memorabilia.
I missed that one, but the one before it was a few years ago. They just rented somebody's house, and he had like a T-Rex head in a glass box underneath his glass staircase, and we kept asking about it, and apparently it's like it had a couple of real bones, and then you make the rest. You have somebody sort of simulate the rest of it, and then you can go, yeah, I've got a $3 million T-Rex jawbone, and then the rest is fake that you paid somebody 100 grand to make.
The bit I don't get, and sometimes manufacturers do these events and these crazy houses, and sometimes they're like on Redfin or something, and they just rent them for the evening because they're up for
Yeah,
sale. But I go to all these places, and it's incredible, like how the people that you probably never meet live. These just these extraordinary $40 million Hollywood, Hollywood
yeah,
Hills or whatever. But they always seem like the least cozy. Nice place to live. Like you always look at it and say, "Oh, that's an incredible view." Or look at the pool. Or imagine this, like whatever,
yeah.
the bar. But you just think like, where would you get up on a Sunday morning and kind of like watch the soccer, or where could you like just kick your shoes off? And they just feel like the least homely places on earth. But maybe I'm just not in the right income bracket to properly appreciate a dinosaur bone in my front room.
Yeah, if you had a T-Rex head, you'd be talking about it to everybody. That would be
Yeah.
your focal point, the T-Rex head. All right, before we get into it, let me tell you about our friends at Bet Online, the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting in 2025. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, Bet Online is your ultimate game day companion. With the largest selection of odds on everything from the NBA to college basketball to the NHL and UFC, Bet Online continues to be your number one sports betting source. From every three-pointer to hat trick, Bet Online has you covered with odds, stats, and more for every game, every play, and every win. Bet Online, the game starts here. Okay, so recently you were driving the Lexus, a new Lexus GX, and I kind of wanted to get into that because we spoke quite a bit about the Toyota counterparts of this, but let's talk about the fancier bits.
Yeah, it's also kind of interesting that it is fancier, but not by much.
Right.
Actually we got a video that's been hugely successful where we compare the Land Cruiser and the GX off road, and this was the Land Cruiser first edition, and it was kind of like a sort of mid-spec GX, but they pretty much lined up on price. There's not
Yeah.
The Land Cruiser starts cheaper if you go for what's a 1958 edition, but actually when you get into that kind of like mid-spec, there's not a lot of difference. But the GX, I think it's more buying on aesthetics. The GX looks quite different. There's a bit of kind of Judge Dredd going on about it. And it has the 3.5 liter V6 rather than a kind of hybrid system. We bought one. I think we talked about it in the show recently, but we've just bought one. I've just spent the last week knocking around at it, and it's a really good thing that we've got the Overtrail version, which is built for more off road. So you got like lockable rear diffs and everything. I think it has low ratio, but it's got bigger, all terrain tires, that kind of thing, which compromises it as a Nats on the road. But it's just a cool big family vehicle to knock around in. The only problem for Lexus is at the moment is every dealer that we talk to, they're still charging mark. Every dealer we talk to, they can't get enough of them. But we had it as a highly recommended in our Edmunds Top Rated Awards, and I'm kind of looking forward to living with it for the next year. Turbo V6, 10-speed auto, 6.7 to 60 at our track, so it's fast enough on the road. You don't really need faster than that. Nice interior, very kind of Lexus. Of course, it's Toyota. Everything feels like it's gonna last forever. There's a real sort of integrity to it. It's kind of at this price, it's like a Land Rover Defender, like rival. Land Cruiser itself is right. There's kind of like what else is there in that market? There isn't really. I suppose you could say, some of the Jeeps sort of compete, but it's kind of quite distinct, and it's much better than. Lexus has got a weird range at the moment. I never remember what all they mean. Well, they got RX, TX, GX.
Yeah.
Sooner or later they got to sort the naming strategy out. But this is kind of my favorite Lexus in a long, long time.
But they're still building this off-road competitiveness to it in the way that Land Rover does, which I think does separate it from some of the other things that are out there, some of the other SUVs that are out there. They don't do the off-road quite as well as Lexus is doing in this instance.
Yeah, this is a proper like overlanding car. And I suspect for like real overlanders, people who really want to put the money in, they're probably going to buy the Land Cruiser. I think the aftermarket will focus on the Land Cruiser rather than the GX. But if you buy the Overtrail like we've bought, you've already got more hardware than most people are likely to use day to day. I'm actually heading up to Sequoia as we record this on Thursday night. I'm heading up to Sequoia for the weekend. It's a long weekend, so I'm taking the family, taking the GX. I'm going to look for a couple of moderate trails while we're up there, and I'm really looking forward to it. It's rained so much in the last couple of days that there might even be a bit of snow or a lot of mud up there, so it's
Yeah.
probably going to be ideal. And really good family unit. Throw everything in. It starts in the 60s. It's not cheap, but you think that the average vehicle now, every average new vehicle is 50 grand. So yes, it's a premium product, but it's kind of a lot of car for the money at the same time.
When you look at the Land Cruiser, you said there's different powertrain options in it. Is this the clear winner
No,
or
I think well, Land Cruiser has the hybrid,
yeah.
and I guess that's just a decision that they've made to differentiate them. Whereas the Lexus has the 3.5 liter V6. Maybe they're
Yeah.
arguing that people just don't, the Lexus customer isn't as bothered about fuel consumption. That is one challenge of this car, that it is not very fuel efficient, and I think you just have to kind of like accept that, really. Yeah, I mean
But
the Land Cruiser is is the 2.4 four cylinder hybrid that you also get. I believe it's the same engine that you also get in the Grand Highlander, and it's that kind of Toyota staple. Whereas Lexus is, give us a big torquey V6.
right. But I guess if you're looking for that extra power, this is really kind of the only option. Does the Land Cruiser come with, does it have a bigger engine that's optional, or is
No,
the
that's your
hybrid the
that
only?
that's your lot at the moment.
Yeah, so I don't know if it's even available, but look, flicking through some of the pictures, you're right. Like it's nice, it's well done, but can you get the Land Cruiser outfitted, at the top trim models with a lot of this, fashionable interior? I imagine you can. I'm just Lexus is probably doing a few things
I think
differently.
it's a personal preference thing. I think it's also because like the Land Cruiser starts at like they can get this 1958 edition, which I actually think looks way cooler. That's the entry level one,
Yeah.
which is they've done this sort of split strategy where you've almost got two models almost sitting side by side. But the Land Cruiser starts good, but I think it's personal preference. Do you prefer the Land Cruiser is almost a brand in its own right, isn't it? It's hybrid, it's a bit more retro. The Lexus is more kind of futuristic, brutalist, if you like. It's got the V6, not the hybrid, so it's going to cost you a bit more to run. I guess it's personal preference.
Yeah.
Personally, I like the 1958, the sort of pretty basic cut to the cloth Land Cruiser, no nonsense. I think that's quite a cool thing. And
Yeah.
that
I'll bring
starts
up
at
a
under
few of those
60.
images while you're
Yeah,
talking. So,
that's the one. You can always tell because the Land Cruiser with the round headlights is the
right.
1958, which is like the base model. But I think it's got a sort of utilitarian chic that's actually quite cool.
The round headlights work on it. So if you're looking at the images at Edmunds.com or looking at on the YouTube page, we're clicking through to the 1958 version and then the normal version. And it has just sort of this rectangular kind of eyebrow, if you will, headlight versus the round one. And I don't know if the 1958 version, can you get it with sort of the base and fully loaded trim versions of that,
No,
or is it? It
it's
comes with
just to
some.
get you into the car.
Yeah.
It's a pretty it's a pretty base package, but in the same way that I think the Defender looks coolest when it's on steel wheels, and
Yeah.
I think they do like a county trim for it now, which is like a real throwback. I think these things always look coolest when you just strip all the nonsense away and you just go back to the roots. But
The
yeah,
aftermarket's going to jump on this pretty quickly and go, hey, did you get yourself the non 1958 version because you were looking for like a higher trim level or whatever, but you want that front end look? There's probably going to be some sort of swap kit.
yeah, or you'll get the 58 and then you can bolt stuff on. I guess that's the fun thing about these vehicles, and we talked about it before. You've now got Forerunner to choose, so you can have a high spec Forerunner for the same price of the Land Cruiser as
Yeah.
the same price you can get the Lexus. So and then you've got the Sequoia, which is barely any more money as well, and the Sequoia is huge. So if you want, the one thing about the Lexus, that three row is tight. So if you want a proper three row, then you've got to go up to the Sequoia, which is obviously based on the Tundra and is enormous. But I also kind of like the Sequoia because I think it has that sort of, again, that starts in the 60s. So there's a lot of crossover between these vehicles. The Sequoia is just massive. And I think it like has that kind of children's toy kind of
Yeah.
vibe about it.
Yeah. When you
It's the
start getting
it's
to
the car that your 5-year-old would buy.
like the really large sort of off-road focus, then you do kind of compete a little bit with like Ford Excursion Tremor,
Yeah.
which is actually pretty cool looking.
It is. I quite like that. There's a lot now of these, like,
Yeah.
so and everybody's going down that. This week we saw Honda's just announced pricing for the new Passport, and they've tried to move that. You remember, like the old one was too close to the CRV.
Yeah.
Now the Passport they're trying to pitch as being a sort of light off-roader. So all the marketing images of it's kind of like, axle articulation, and it's a sort of 46 200 all the way to 55. So that's also trying to get in on this kind of Tonka toy feel. I think that's a good looking vehicle.
The Passport.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that again is kind of like a bit of a left field forerunner. It might not be quite as hardcore in terms of what it's set up to do, but for people who just want to, be a great skiing car or something like that, maybe not for like super hardcore off-roading, but it'd be great for, people who just want to go hiking and want to get themselves a decent distance, but not do the Moab.
I don't even remember the size of this thing. Is this Ford Explorer size or is this like baby Bronco size? Bronco
This
Sport?
is bigger than a CRV, certainly wider than a CRV.
Yeah.
So it's a size up from a CRV. So it's kind of one of those like weird sort of tweener cars. So it's not Explorer because they've got the Passport, which is the 3-row, which does the Explorer bit.
Yeah,
So I think this is basically them pulling another car off that Pilot
right.
setup. So it's like, I mean, I think it's a cool thing. I mean, I think it's more interesting than a CRV for a bit more money, but not like a crazy amount more. And I think it'll do well just because it's a bit cooler looking than a
Yeah.
CRV.
Doesn't Mazda doing a more of an off-roady trim? Not the CX.
CX50, yeah.
But is there like a package on it, like the Tremor package that Ford is doing that Mazda is doing on the CX50? I don't recall if that's the one that I
I
saw.
feel like I feel like I'm in a quiz today, Matt. It's like a real test of my knowledge. Anyone on the test team on it, like live and breathe this
Yeah.
every single day. Yeah,
It-
I'm sure the
there's just
CX.
so many cars now. There's just so many vehicles and so many cars and so much
Yeah,
testing.
the CX50. I think the 55. Oh my God, it's too many cars. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
also like, can we please have? I know we talked about this before. Can we please have like sensible naming strategies so that we don't constantly have all this, like CX50, CX50 hybrid, RX, TX, GX, LX. Like,
Yeah.
talk to somebody on the street. What's the difference between a GX, an RX, a TX, and a whatever?
Yeah, and don't get me started on Mercedes. EQS, EQE, EQ. I
And
lost track of.
Audi's just reversing out of it. So Audi spent all that money on. They've obviously spent a lot of. You mentioned how many meetings are hard to say, right? Which way round was it? All the EVs are going to be EVs are going to be even numbers, and so A4 would be an EV, A5 would be a gas car or a hybrid,
Yeah,
and then A6 would be EV again. And now they just come out and gone, yeah, that was a bad idea. We're not doing that anymore. Presumably, like all the dealers have just come. None of our salespeople get it, and the customers don't understand either. But it's just like, yeah.
yeah.
American
So
cars used to have like, we just need to go back to cool names. Think about the past, cool names. That was always a differentiator. British cars, rubbish names. American cars, cool names.
we were talking about the Passport. You mentioned Nissan a minute ago as well, and Honda and Nissan's big, merger that we were talking about for maybe a few weeks ago. That sounds like it's been stalling out. I guess. I mean, I don't know how much of this we know for sure, but the rumor on it is that Honda was saying, hey, yeah, let's merge, but we need to make some cuts. You need to lay off some people. Maybe need to close a factory, and we're going to sort of absorb you more than you think. And Nissan was going, pump the brakes. We have a lot of proprietary information that even if you buy into us or acquire us, we're not even sure we're ready to share that information yet. So we're not quite ready to get you a real peek behind the curtain and see the Wizard of Oz back there.
I would
So
love to know what Nissan has
yeah,
that would be, I don't know, maybe being unfair, but there's nothing on the face of it that Nissan or Infiniti have that would be like some massive revelation. I can't imagine it. Anyway, maybe they've got some like
yeah.
epic technology they haven't, they're about to unleash on the world, but it's hard to know what Nissan would have that Honda would look walking and go, oh my God, we're like years behind. You know,
Right.
the
And
iPhone moment.
you look at Honda as the parent company, they're going, hey, Nissan, you've got some cars and trucks, some good stuff, a couple of cool sports cars. We've got jets, we've got robots, we've got motorcycles, lawn equipment. We've got, like, what are you doing at
Yeah.
Nissan that Honda hasn't really thought about at this point? So they were, I, I guess I don't know what the hesitation is. Maybe there's something deeply rooted within
It,
Nissan
yeah.
that listen. I think Honda could have capitalized on the brand name, some shared platform resources, some of the history, the legacy there. But something in those negotiations where they were like, "We need access to this," and Nissan's like, "I don't think so."
Yeah. I mean, I've worked through one acquisition, and I've probably you done the same, like in different parts of our careers, and yeah, there's also that whole like little the onion thing, isn't it, where you peel one layer off, and
Yeah,
it's like, oh, and it's difficult. I mean, Nissan is in a tough spot right now. Stellantis is in a tough spot. You know, that it looked like a Honda, Nissan thing. Also, there's Mitsubishi in there. You kind of forget Mitsubishi, but they're in there. Then there's
Yeah.
the Renault bit. Then there's the Renault bit of it. You know, where does like Renault, Nissan, Mitsubishi? It's a right mess, and somehow you've got to pull all that apart and then,
Yeah.
put Humpty Dumpty back together again.
And maybe that's part of it. Maybe it's the other partners, like what Mitsubishi was doing, what Renault is doing, uh, and how they were part of the company is what they really don't want to get into. But so there's a company called Foxconn. Probably not a name people know. It's a big electronics company. I think they do a lot of work for Apple and make pieces for the phones and stuff. I don't want to say they're just a straight up chip manufacturer, but they make a lot of different pieces.
They were
And
involved with Fisker, weren't they, as well, at one
I
point
think they were, yeah.
with the
And
pair,
and
yeah,
they
that
they've
went
been
pear shaped.
trying to get into the EV game. They want to expand their product range by going beyond, let's say, the iPhone or a laptop, and they want to get into the EV space. They weren't able to successfully do it with Fisker, obviously. So they and this isn't the first time that Nissan has spoken to them and they weren't able to make a deal. But now that I think Nissan is a little bit more desperate and maybe Foxconn has kind of learned the Fisker lesson. So uh, there's the potential savior there is can Foxconn come in and and now as an electronics company, they can go to Nissan and go, we're going to provide some, you know, programming and hardware and software support as well as money, but we're not a competitive car company. So there's nothing really proprietary that you guys have that's going to be competitive with whatever they're doing, which was
Yeah,
the Honda issue,
yeah.
right? So maybe
I
Nissan
guess it's
gets
just,
saved.
I just guess the whole thing is like the finances and everything is such a, giant. All these companies are such giant oil tankers, and we were hypothesizing the other day, and we are talking to the team at Dodge, and and like, what does the future look like for everybody, and where does the EV market look like? Because right now it's like, well, who knows what's going on with the legislation? It looks like the EV tax credit is going. That seems like a done thing.
Yeah.
If that happens, what does that do to the EV market? Well, actually, everything's going to get, Honda's saying a Prologue EV is going to get twice as expensive to lease. Okay. So the demand is going to crash there. What does this look like in a few years' time? You want my bet on it, which, well, who am I? But you're probably going to end up, I think, as things stand right now with the infrastructure it is, and there's been an exec order to cancel the infrastructure bill for building EV charging, which frankly they barely built any anyway. So I think
Yeah.
that's one executive order that'll have almost no practical impact, at least in the short term. But what does this look like? You get rid of all this, are we going to end up with 20% EVs in a decade's time?
Right.
I mean, I would be surprised if nationwide we were much more than 20-30% EVs in the next 5-10 years. It just doesn't feel like it right now. If anything, we're going backwards.
Yeah.
So, I mean, California might continue to grow, and that's, but the rest of the country, it's hard to imagine where we, with all the bad press and all the rebates going away and everything else, it's hard, and the infrastructure not really accelerating. It's hard to say, okay, we're at, what are we at, 8% at the moment? It's not easy to see a path to 20-30% nationwide adoption. I just don't see it.
Yeah. And I don't know that so many of these car companies need to have more EVs in their fleet when they should probably focus more on improving the ones they have because we're starting to see now we're just starting to get into like generation 2 of certain EVs like the facelifted or revised Porsche Taycan, right?
Yeah.
Okay, what we needed was a better Taycan. It was a good start but not great, and instead of giving us 5 more Porsche EVs, like let's just make this one better and
I
see if
think
they
you're a bit harsh. I mean, the Taycan was pretty good. I mean, honestly,
it's
like now, if
good,
you look,
yeah.
if you look at the used value of a Taycan right now, it's like, does that make it a really good value? I mean, the other one that really, I was looking the other couple of days ago, Audi e-tron GT. So
Yeah.
this was the same car pretty much underneath as the Taycan. Decent car, not like groundbreaking or epic, but they're down to like 40-50 grand. And they were if you want a new one today, I know it's been updated slightly, but that's like over 120 grand. That's a lot of car
Yeah.
for for that kind of price point. And
It is if it works, and that's been the issue is it's
yeah,
had some issues with staying on the road.
the,
I
the,
mean,
the,
moving on the road. Sitting there in one spot is easy because when it breaks and it sits there and you got to tow it away. But
yeah.
and again, I actually haven't driven the Audi GT, but know a guy who has one and it's just had issues with it, unfortunately, because I think it's pretty.
That's
I
a
like it.
shame because there's a lot of things you should go on, but yeah, we'll you know we'll see. But everybody's in a tough spot right now, and we the big thing that when we look at the site traffic, we can see like what the barometer of the industry is and where everybody
Yeah,
sits. Right now, everybody's interested in hybrids, and it's not hybrids have lost that stigma of being the Prius.
yeah,
I think everybody now just looks at a hybrid and says this is just an efficient way of going down the road, and so that for me feels like the short term future. And then I'm less convinced by plug-in hybrids, but we'll see. They're getting better and better. And then let's see how the market shakes out. But it's hard to see a path from 8%, 20% in California to mass adoption in the next 10 years. It's just
yeah.
hard to see that path right now.
All right. Well, how about we take a quick break and then we can get into the fun and ridiculous. All right. We'll be right back. Okay. So next up is I was checking out the latest U-Drag videos and we took the Z06 against the Maserati MC20 and we've talked already in the past. You drove the MC20 or did a road trip or something on the MC20. I was complaining because it was yellow, and I just don't think that's a great color on that car or any car. And you've been raving about the Z06, but now the U-Drag video kind of shows the numbers. It looked like a fun video to shoot, by the way.
It is fun. I already talked about you jokes a fair bit on the show, but it is always fun. But it's funny. I was talking to the president of Edmunds a couple of days ago, and his brother-in-law was apparently seen a Model 3 Performance, which he owns against an M3 CS, and was saying it was fun. He said, "Oh, it looked like a fun thing." I was like, honestly, I think it was like the fifth shoot of the day. So we'd done four of the races, and by that time, all different cars. It's like 110 degrees. You
Yeah.
almost get to the point some days where it's like I can't even remember what I'm supposed to be driving right now. But it is fun. I don't want to sound spoiled because it's a great way to earn a living. And yeah, you don't. I'm doing one in a couple of weeks' time, and I think, a lot of these days I'm busy driving a desk or whatever, and I don't get as much time to go and play as some of the teams. So I'm looking forward to going and doing another round of it. But yeah, I mean, that MC20, this Maserati, I can't remember off the top of my head how much that one we were driving came out at, but I want to say it was over 300 grand. I think it's probably, I don't know whether it's in the thing exactly how much the one that we had was, but it was an extraordinary sum of money.
Yeah.
And I think depending on the spec, it's like two or three times more than the Corvette. And the problem is with it, it's incredibly pretty. I think it's probably the most beautiful of the contemporary supercars, not so much in yellow. I agree with you, not with a big Trident badge on the back. But if you have a nice subtle color, it's beautiful. And then, but it's just got the wrong engine. A car like that needs like a V8 or a V10 or something that just has like if you had one of like a Lamborghini V10 in like the Hurricane engine into one of those, it'd be amazing. The interior feels
Yeah.
special, looks amazing. Doors are silly because you can't get out anywhere, but it's cool. But it's just got the wrong engine, and it's fast, but it doesn't sound it. It doesn't even feel that fast. And then we put it against the Z06, and we were still a bit shocked by how the Z06 just slaughtered it.
So setting this up though, the Maserati is a 3-liter twin turbo V6, 621 horsepower
Yeah, so it's not slow.
versus a 5.5 liter V8 naturally aspirated, 670 horsepower. So, 50 horsepower difference, but probably lighter Maserati, right?
It should be. I mean, at least
Yeah.
on paper, the Maserati's carbon fiber. It's it's got a turbo engine. There's a lot of things that, in theory, carbon brakes. A lot of things that should point to success for the Maserati.
I mean, looking at your notes, 332 pounds lighter. The,
Yeah,
the Maserati.
which is that's a sizable passenger. That's a big passenger. That's big. That's
Yeah.
Goldberg plus, isn't it?
I mean, what did
That's
we?
Goldberg and you, Matt.
Yeah, it is. Uh, what do we equate something like 100 pounds to about a tenth in the quarter mile, right? Tenth of a second, somewhere around there, right? Kind of a rule of thumb. Just if you were just quickly crunching numbers in your head, roughly
Yeah.
that. Uh, so the Maserati's lightness would improve the overall performance of that car. So how do these do? Obviously, the Z06 won. It's
So let's start by saying they're both like fast. I mean, the Maserati does the quarter in 11.4. By any standards, that's a fast car, right? But these days, it's not really just looking at powered away. It's also how the launch control element, the launch element, just seems to be such a bearing these days.
Yeah.
On how they get off the line. And the BMW is a case in point. The BMW launch control system's a nightmare because especially if it's hot, it works or it doesn't work, or you read the manual and you've got to stand on one leg and wave at Germany before it'll even consider working. But when it works, nothing is better at launching than a BMW when the system works. But they've probably just got it fine-tuned to the nth degree that it's super temperamental, but when it works,
Yeah.
it really goes. Maserati launch just felt like a generation behind, or maybe they ran out of money or time to really do it properly.
Yeah.
And then the Z06 just, it's mid-engine, of course, so all the weight's in the right place. So is the Maserati, but the technology and the electronics are better. It's interesting, isn't it? We're talking about like an American supercar, and actually it's the technology that's really driving it forwards, if you'll pardon the pun. So we see this a lot. It's a lot about how they launch. I mean, the sleeper if you look at our top 10, the sleeper, if you like, at number 9 is the BMW M8 Competition, which is not a car that you naturally associate as being like crazy fast, but all-wheel drive, launches like hell, 10.8 to the quarter, big brakes. It just fits the format really well.
Yeah. All right. Let's take a look at the leaderboard.
And the Z06 is in there at number 7. So your top 3, like, you should just discount the EVs because the really fast EVs are like in a different universe. I mean, the Lucid Air Sapphire's, what is it, 1.7 seconds faster than a McLaren 765 LT, which is just mind blowing, isn't it? I mean,
Right. So the top 3 on your leaderboard is the Lucid Sapphire Air, the Lucid Air Sapphire, sorry, the Porsche Taycan Turbo GT, which every time they add more words to the name, the price goes up.
Yeah.
Like it's like $50,000 per extra word.
If you add Vizak edition, it's an extra 50 grand.
Yeah, it's an extra 50 grand. And then the Tesla Model S Plaid. So those, by the way, they're all running mid to low 9s in the quarter mile.
Yeah.
And it's always especially the Lucid Air being number 1 on the leaderboard. I looked at it and I was like, okay, it's an incredible amount of power. I saw it up at Monterey. They were doing hot laps, ride-alongs, in this car. It's like 250 grand or something, and hitting up Laguna Seca. But I was just thinking on the U-Drags, like, I get it, but it's just so big and heavy. Maybe it's just not going to handle the turn. It's not going to handle the braking. And if it does well, it's going to do it with just brute force on the launch and in the straight line performance. But was that the case or not? Maybe this
No,
thing
it was
maybe
to do well on this is the whole point of the concept. You can't. There's the odd car, I mean, like Durango Hellcat, which did surprisingly well just because just sheer brute force.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, to run a time that's 1.7 seconds faster than a 765 LT, you've got to do it all, right? And just the way that thing brakes, again, everything's just so highly spec'd. Massive brakes, massive stopping performance, tons of grip from from sticky tires,
Yeah.
and then just bang out the corner. And the great thing about EVs, because it's quite a relatively slow corner. I mean, we're typically pulling, I think in the Z06 we're pulling like 1.35G, which is a lot. It's an airfield, so you've got a kind of inherently grippy surface. It's grippier than our normal test track. And
Yeah.
then the advantage of the EVs is they're not hunting for gears, they're not changing down, they're not like, you're not ready for roast build. It's just bang, instant torque, just hauls just hauls us out of the corner in a way that and we saw that in the Model 3 against the M3 CS, just coming out the corner, the Model 3 just picked up and went. Whereas, and I think that's what's great about the Z06 as well. It just is a fantastic all-rounder. The brakes are mega. I mean, the brakes are mega on the Maserati as well, to be honest. That was if
Yeah.
you watch the video, the Maserati, I think, is gaining a little bit under braking. It's really good under brakes. But then the Z06 just the noise and the whole thing. I think
Right.
it's a fabulous car. And I wonder, we're all excited by the ZR1. And I know there's been an announcement this week. It's broken this lap record and that lap record. And, in the right hands, it's going to be unbelievably fast. But I can't help thinking the Z06 is going to be the one for the future.
I mean, I'm kind of curious. Like, I know we can throw in some supercars in here. Like, this list is more about cars that are a little bit more attainable than, say, like the Koenigsegg or a Pagani or something like that. But uh, I'd love to see where the ZR1 falls in here, and I'd love to see where the Mustang GTD
So
falls in here. We've got to find a way to get a hold of a GTD.
I think
And
I think getting a ZR1 is probably more like, but I don't know about getting a GT. We'll have to see. Ford's a bit nervous. I think Ford's going to be so anxious about that car. I think we're going to have to find an owner, because I think the odds on
I think you
Ford.
have to find an owner. Yeah, that's the way
I
to
think the
do it
odds
for
on
sure.
Ford giving us one of those to put against the ZR. We'll see. But maybe this is the challenge that we need to lay down is, if they got confidence in the car, come out here and beat it. But
Yeah.
yeah, we like, we always sit around, at the after the shoot's over, and like, where would a ZR1 sit? If anything's going to beat the Lucid, ZR1's going to weigh a lot less. It's got less horsepower by about 200, but that powder weight, I suspect, must be better. Must be better. It's going to be mega in the braking, cornering. I mean, if any car's going to be faster than the Lucid Air Sapphire, you've got to think that's the
Yeah.
that's the car. Otherwise, we're going to have to get into like one of the really silly EVs, like the what was that little thing that went up Goodwood? I can't remember.
The
Little
McMurtry.
McMurtry, yeah,
Yeah.
one of those. Or
Yeah.
I've driven the Pininfarina Battista, which was what, $4 million, and that's got 1,800 horsepower. And I
Right.
drove that around
Right.
Malibu, and it was like,
Hennessy, Venom
yeah,
F5.
yeah. We did talk to Hennessy at one point. There's a few. Like, for people who are listening to this, there's a few out there that we would love to run.
Yeah. But the list is good. And I know you kept saying the 765 LT, but really the 765 and the 750, which was the predecessor to the 720, they're pretty much tied.
They
And
are the seven. If you look, the 750 is slightly faster to the quarter, exactly the same time overall. I think because the 750 is basically a 765. I think took a lot of learnings from that car and
yeah.
introduced it, and so I can't remember what rubber it was running that day, but
And the 750 is probably just a little bit more comfortable than the 765. So I kind of feel like the 750 is the benchmark. That's a wonderful car to drive.
that is a great car. And I know McLaren's in new ownership now, and that bodes well for the future. But that, again, not the best sounding car ever, but great piece of engineering, and it's just
Yeah.
it's a cool thing.
Yeah. And I think the 750 versus the ZR1 is especially interesting because, rear mid engine, rear wheel drive, not like the EVs with all wheel drive. Like I see them being, I know you got, and both V8 turbos, right? Both V8
Yeah.
turbos. Uh, the ZR1 putting down more power. And
That's that is what somebody asked me the other day, what I was most looking forward to driving this year, and I was supposed to say something sensible, and I didn't. I just said the ZR1. It's like, it's just, I don't know yeah, now the GT3 is like 300 grand or whatever. Like that car, even in full spec, even with all the carbon on it and everything else, is 200 grand. Which, let's face it, insane. For guys that vast sum of money. Let's be right about it. But relative to everything else, that thing's going to be a hell of a bargain. It's
Yeah.
just it's
I
a
mean,
bit the only thing with all these things is they're so in your face. That ZR1 with a big wing on the back, you're just making a statement everywhere you go. And that's why like the 911 Turbo S in there at sixth place. That's just for me, that's just such an amazing everyday car, isn't it? That's
right. Such a drivable car
of
and
all.
the
I mean,
amount
like a
of power and
750.
performance.
Yeah, I mean, like a 750. Every time you go out, it's a thing. You turn up and you just take your 911 Turbo S. You want to go to the Whole Foods to get your croissant, no problem. You want to take it up to skiing or whatever. It's just a fantastic. This is everyday car. I mean,
Yeah.
amazing.
All right. So I think we're pretty much out of time for today. What else you got coming up?
We've got another U-Drags in a couple of weeks' time. What else? What else we got going on that I can talk about? We've got a fully tested film of the Flying Spur, the Bentley coming out. We had that down at the test track. We thought it was kind of
Yeah.
interesting to run some
So we
numbers on
talked a
that
little bit
car.
about it last week with
Yeah,
Brian.
that's
Now
right,
we got
with
the video
Brian, and
coming out.
that video is imminent. We got a good. We got a good small SUV thing, so we've got some great wheel well stuff as well. But yeah, interesting time. I kind of still feel like the year's sort of ramping up a little bit for us.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Looking forward to it. And yeah, check out Edmunds.com. Check out the Edmunds YouTube channel. You can see all the U-Drags videos there. You can always follow us on social media as well. We always throw up the links in the videos and on the podcast. So yeah, give us a follow. We're gonna wrap things up. Until next time, keep the air in the spare and the bag in the wheel.